Imagine surviving the deadliest weapon ever created. Now imagine surviving it twice. Not in a simulation, not in a movie, not in a fictional story. In real life. One man stood just a few kilometers from the first atomic bomb ever used in war. He survived. 3 days later, he returned home, went back to work. And then, another atomic bomb exploded over the city he had just returned to. 2 different cities, 2 different explosions, 1 man. It sounds impossible, like the kind of story that becomes exaggerated over time. But this one didn't. It happened. His name was Tsutomu Yamaguchi, and against every law of probability, he became the only person officially recognized by the Japanese government as surviving both atomic bombings. To understand how something so unbelievable happened, we have to go back to the final months of World War II. By the summer of 1945, the war was reaching its final chapter. Germany had already surrendered, but Japan continued fighting. Its cities had been bombed repeatedly. Factories lay in ruins. Food was becoming scarce. Resources were disappearing. Yet, despite the destruction, millions of ordinary people still woke up every morning, went to work, raised families, tried to live normal lives. Among them was a 29-year-old engineer named Tsutomu Yamaguchi. He worked for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. His job involved designing oil tankers. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't making history. He was simply trying to do his job. In August of 1945, he traveled to Hiroshima on a business assignment. The trip was supposed to last only a few days. Then he would return home to Nagasaki. It seemed routine, just another work trip. He had no idea it would become one of the most important journeys in human history. The morning began quietly. The sky above Hiroshima was unusually clear. People walked to work. Children headed to school. Streetcars moved through the city. Shops opened. Nothing felt different. High above Japan, an American B-29 bomber called the Enola Gay approached the city. Inside was a single bomb. It had a nickname, Little Boy, unlike any weapon ever used before. It contained the power of nuclear fission, a chain reaction capable of releasing unimaginable energy in less than a second. Few people on the ground even noticed the aircraft. Air raid alarms had sounded many times during the war. Most people simply continued their daily routines. Yamaguchi was preparing to leave Hiroshima. His business trip had ended. He was walking toward the shipyard. He suddenly realized he had forgotten an important document. Turning around to retrieve it would unknowingly save his life. That small decision changed everything. At exactly 8:15 in the morning, everything changed. A blinding white flash filled the sky, brighter than the sun. People later described it as if the world itself had exploded. The bomb detonated approximately 600 meters above the city. For a fraction of a second, temperatures near the center reached several thousand degrees Celsius. A massive fireball expanded outward. Then came the blast wave. Buildings collapsed. Windows shattered instantly. Steel twisted. Concrete cracked. Entire neighborhoods disappeared. Yamaguchi was about 3 kilometers from the explosion, close enough to be thrown violently through the air. The blast ruptured his eardrums, burned much of the left side of his body, temporarily blinded him. He hit the ground hard, dazed, confused, barely able to understand what had happened. Around him, the city had become almost unrecognizable. Dark smoke rose into the sky. Fires spread everywhere. People stumbled through the streets with severe burns. Others searched desperately for family members. Some simply stood frozen, unable to comprehend the destruction around them. Then something even stranger happened. A massive cloud began rising above the city. It grew higher and higher, forming the shape the world would later recognize as the mushroom cloud. Nobody in Hiroshima had ever seen anything like it, because nobody had. The nuclear age had begun. Despite his injuries, Yamaguchi knew he had to leave. He found temporary shelter. Doctors wrapped his burns as best they could. Medical supplies were almost non-existent. Hospitals themselves had been destroyed. Thousands of injured people overwhelmed the few remaining doctors. Everywhere he looked, there was destruction. Roads blocked, buildings burning, smoke covering the horizon. Yet somehow, railway lines outside the immediate blast zone still functioned. Following day, injured and exhausted, Yamaguchi boarded a train. Many passengers were burned. Some barely spoke. Nobody fully understood what had happened. Rumors spread through every train carriage. A new bomb, a single bomb, one city destroyed. It sounded impossible. But everyone on that train had seen enough to know it was real. After a painful journey, Yamaguchi arrived home to Nagasaki. His wife was alive, his young son was alive. For one brief moment, it seemed the nightmare was finally over. He believed he had escaped history. He was wrong. Despite severe burns, Yamaguchi reported back to work on August 9th. His co-workers noticed the bandages covering much of his body. His face was swollen. His injuries were obvious. His manager asked what had happened. Yamaguchi described the unbelievable events in Hiroshima. He tried explaining the flash, the blast, fires, the single bomb that destroyed an entire city. Some reportedly found the story difficult to believe. How could one bomb destroy everything? Such a weapon seemed impossible. As the discussion continued, history repeated itself, almost exactly. At around 11 o'clock that morning, another flash lit up the sky, even brighter than memory. Yamaguchi immediately recognized it. He knew exactly what it meant. Before anyone else understood, he threw himself to the ground. Seconds later, the blast wave struck. The second atomic bomb, Fat Man, had exploded over Nagasaki. The second explosion was different, not because it was weaker, not because it was less destructive, but because this time, Yamaguchi knew exactly what was happening. Only 3 days earlier, he had watched an entire city disappear. Now, he was watching it happen again. Bomb that exploded over Nagasaki was called Fat Man. Unlike Hiroshima's bomb, which used uranium, Fat Man used plutonium. It detonated high above the city. Again, a blinding flash. Again, a massive fireball. Again, a shockwave racing faster than the speed of sound. Buildings shook violently. Windows exploded inward. Factories collapsed. Entire neighborhoods vanished beneath fire and dust. Yamaguchi had survived the first atomic bomb. Now, he had survived the second. It was almost impossible to comprehend. One person, 2 cities, 2 nuclear explosions. Still alive. People often imagine surviving an atomic bomb means standing at the center of the explosion. That isn't how these weapons work. The closer you are, the lower your chances become. Yamaguchi wasn't standing directly beneath either bomb. He was several kilometers away both times, close enough to receive severe burns, close enough to suffer radiation exposure, close enough to be thrown by the blast, but just far enough to avoid instant death. Distance mattered, buildings mattered, timing mattered, pure luck mattered even more. Move only a few hundred meters closer, and history would have been completely different. Sometimes, survival depends on decisions so small, you don't even realize you're making them. Forgetting a document, taking one road instead of another, standing behind one wall instead of another. Tiny moments, life-changing consequences. Most people think the explosion is the deadliest part of a nuclear weapon. In reality, the danger continues long after the blast. Radiation cannot be seen, it cannot be smelled, it cannot be heard. Yet, it continues damaging living cells long after the explosion ends. Doctors quickly noticed symptoms among survivors. Hair began falling out, burns worsened, high fevers appeared. People who looked healthy one day collapsed the next. Many had no visible injuries, yet inside their bodies, radiation was damaging bone marrow, destroying blood cells, weakening the immune system, increasing the risk of infection. The bombs had created an entirely new type of medical emergency. One the world barely understood. Scientists had studied radiation before, but never on this scale. Never after an entire city had been exposed. Hospitals struggled to explain what they were seeing. Many doctors became victims themselves, treating thousands of patients while unknowingly exposing themselves to radioactive fallout. Hiroshima had been devastated. Now Nagasaki suffered the same fate. Within days, hundreds of thousands of lives had changed forever. Families disappeared, schools vanished, factories became rubble. Entire neighborhoods simply ceased to exist. The mushroom clouds became symbols of destruction unlike anything humanity had witnessed before. For survivors, life would never return to normal. Many lost parents, children, friends, homes, everything familiar disappeared in only a few seconds. Even those who survived physically often carried invisible scars for decades. Nightmares, grief, fear, and memories impossible to erase. For Yamaguchi, survival was only the beginning. His burns slowly healed, his hearing partially recovered, but the memories remained. People often asked him the same question: how did you survive twice? He rarely described it as luck alone. Instead, he spoke about the horror of nuclear weapons, not to frighten people, but to warn them, because he had witnessed something almost nobody else ever would: the beginning of the nuclear age. He knew exactly what these weapons could do. Not in theory, not in books, not through photographs. He had stood beneath both mushroom clouds. He had seen the destruction with his own eyes. For many years, few people knew his story. Records existed, witnesses existed, but the idea sounded too unbelievable. Many assumed it had to be exaggerated. Eventually, historical records confirmed his experiences. In 2009, the Japanese government officially recognized Tsutomu Yamaguchi as a survivor of both atomic bombings. The recognition wasn't about setting a record. It wasn't about fame. It was about preserving history. Because as time passed, fewer eyewitnesses remained. Each survivor carried memories that could never be recreated, memories no photograph could fully capture. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain among the most controversial events in modern history. Some argue they ended the war quickly. Others believe alternatives existed. Historians continue debating those questions today. But one fact is beyond debate: the human suffering was immense. The explosions changed military history, political history, scientific history, and the future of warfare forever. For the first time, human beings possessed weapons capable of destroying entire cities in seconds. That reality transformed the world. Countries raced to build larger nuclear arsenals. The Cold War followed. Nuclear deterrence became global policy. The fear of atomic war shaped generations, all because of two bombs, dropped only 3 days apart. Tsutomu Yamaguchi died in 2010 at the age of 93. He spent much of his later life speaking publicly about nuclear disarmament, not because he wanted people to remember him, but because he wanted people to remember what nuclear weapons do. His story is extraordinary, not because he survived, but because he survived twice, against impossible odds. He witnessed two of the most destructive explosions in human history. He lost friends. He suffered painful injuries. He carried memories that few people could ever understand. Yet he continued living, continued speaking, continued warning the world. History often remembers weapons, generals, battles, but sometimes the most important stories belong to ordinary people: an engineer, a husband, a father, a man who went on a business trip and accidentally became the only officially recognized survivor of both atomic bombings. Sometimes the most unbelievable stories aren't science fiction. They are history, and history can be far stranger than fiction.